Welcome to the Spiritual and Empowerment Living with Tia podcast, a sacred place and resource for spiritually centered women who want to go from the mundane to the magical life, for overcoming fear and doubt, reconnecting with the goddess, understanding messages from spirit, and uncovering your spiritual gifts so you can finally live the life you deserve. Hello and welcome, Spiritual Trailblazers. I am very excited for this episode. This is a long time coming. It's something that I love to do. So may this episode provide a resource for you for Witchy TV and more. So I welcome you to this episode, Witchy TV Talk with Henri Metivier. Henri helps his clients to step through doors that were never locked. He works with successful leaders looking to freely go further than they currently believe possible. Henri coaches around exquisite clarity, connecting vision to emotion, logic, and intuition so that his clients can live a life of purpose, direction, and achievement. Henri clients live their lives without cages. Currently, Henri runs his business through having powerful conversations, one referral at a time. You can find him on Clubhouse, and I'll attach his handle at Clubhouse. You can DM him, and of course, contact him on Instagram at Henri EMILE04. And again, I will put that in the description as well. And welcome, Henri.
Hi, thanks. How's it going?
Good, good. Man, it's going. So Witchy TV Talk. My gosh, there's so many we can talk about. And I know we went through a filtering process. So I'm so happy that we're going to be covering these TV shows. So let's dive right into it.
Awesome. Sounds
So
great.
awesome. So the first one we have up is Lost Girl. And per IMDb, it's the character Bo is a supernatural being who challenges her clan's way of life, which I think it's deeper than that, but I see where they're going.
Yeah, totally agree. Definitely not exactly that.
So and well, I remember when I watched Lost Girl, I think it was just like 3 seasons, and I remember being so heartbroken because I didn't realize that it was coming to an end. So for those who are listening, it's actually a Canadian show, and you are in Canada, and I'm in the States. I remember we were always a season behind,
hmm
and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. So, how did you first come across Lost Girl, and what were some of the things that really attracted you to, watching this show?
Yeah, I think I first saw it when it was on, I think season one was on Netflix. And of course,
Hmm.
like you said, it was a season, they were already in season two by the time season one came out. And then the sci-fi, their streaming platform, the sci-fi channel here, I think had the next season. So it was, I could watch it a little bit more real time. But I had first discovered it on Netflix. And I think within the first episode, one of the things that I love about this story is that it was a story where she basically was challenging the status quo and saying, I don't care about the rules that you've established just because you say them when there's no real reason why they exist other than to exist. Or it's based off of some past BS, that we've been dealing with for centuries, and I don't care about all of that. That's not my burden.
Right. Yeah. So there's the light fae and a dark fae. And then there's Bo, who's in between. She just said, I'm not pledging allegiance to either. I'm doing my own thing. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways is that that's part of the reason why she's lost is because she doesn't have an exact clan. She's Bo.
Exactly. And so she's kind of stuck in the middle of this again, like I said, this war essentially between the light fae and the dark fae. And because she's kind of that neutral party, both of those sides use her. They use her to their advantage to hurt the other side. And sometimes she knows it, and sometimes she doesn't. Um, which so I find that that was obviously a really interesting way to kind of keep the drama alive throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, what I really loved truly was that she just disrupted the whole thing, and she said, "I'm not going to do it this way." Um, the one thing that I will say that I guess I would have loved to see more of was more Faye coming into their own, choosing the same thing. You didn't actually see
Mhm.
that. All you saw is she was the Lone Ranger, shaking up the status quo, but no one else ever really truly joined her. They were
Mhm.
still always their, typical allegiances, even if, some of the characters went to quote unquote the dark side in certain episodes or something where they did things that were really heinous for the greater good.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I would have loved to have seen more of that.
Yeah, and one thing, speaking of seeing more of, is I would have loved to see how certain things would have played out if more people were in the in between, neither light fae nor dark fae, because it seemed like some people didn't want to be a part of that. And to the main character, Bo's growth is that she was a succubus. She, dated who she wanted to date, and she had to constantly stand her ground. So, I mean, we see this even in our real lives where we're constantly have to stand our ground. We constantly have to, say this is what works for me. It may not work for you, but that's okay. So I just think that this show has so many dynamics now that we can see still apply to today.
Yeah, and I think what was really interesting, I mean, well, this one very, very much in particular, is this idea of, your loyalty pledge.
Hmm.
And basically what happens when you pledge yourself to light or dark is you literally say, the leader of the light fae can do whatever they want, basically to me, and I'm not going to push back because I'm pledging unyielding loyalty no matter what.
Hmm.
And again, she basically was like, no, nah, not doing that. And I mean, there's a lot of parallels in today's world, with, in the last 4 years in the United States, obviously, there was that dynamic. And there wasn't anybody who really truly seemed to push against that in a way that was successful. And so obviously, I love shows that always draw parallels to real life because I feel like that's also, I think, from the other shows that we're going to discuss, it's like this idea of having a show that is fantasy and fantastical and it's got magic and it's got all of those things, but then there's still a kernel of realism in there, and that's what grounds it for me.
Hmm.
And Lost Girl did a really good job of doing that.
Yeah, and I think they also did a good job with incorporating certain things like Krampus with it was not music but the little bit of sound magic. The one
Mm-hmm.
character, he used his voice and things like this. So I think they did a good job of that. And there was even one episode that sticks out in my mind because I believe this to some extent is there's one kid, he was a football player, and they were trying to figure out why people in the stadiums like energy were getting drained. And this one kid just so happened to heal faster. He was stronger. He was bigger than the other kids on the football team. And what they realized was that he was a descendant of Hercules. So I'm thinking, I wonder how this could play out in our real world where we see people who just have these extraordinary, gifts, whatever the case may be, whether they are mathematicians and they can just solve these crazy equations, or they're athletically gifted. So I just thought that was another thing that was pretty cool about this show.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think that, though, unfortunately, they didn't explore that as much as they could have.
Hmm.
To your point earlier, the show definitely got abruptly canceled. I mean, I will say that I can't remember which season it was, but that whole thing where Bo disappeared and was
Hmm.
on this weird train,
Yeah.
that whole story, I 100% didn't follow that at all. I had no freaking clue what was going on there. Um, and so I do wonder if that they kind of lost the thread a little because there
Yeah.
was still so much left that they never truly explored. There's so
Hmm.
many things that they still never answered, which was really, Bo, what she was looking for, and they kind of answered it for her, but it was really, who am I really?
Hmm.
And I still don't really know that they fully answered that. obviously that's an existential question that we always all ask is like, who are we really? Am I light fae or dark fae? And of course, she still said it. She's like, I'm both. I have light and I have dark in me. And that's obviously all human beings, right? Yin and yang, all of that. But I still don't feel like there was a satisfying way that show ended. It did feel very abrupt.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, I had no clue. But you start to notice certain people dying, and you're like, okay, wait a minute now. I was sitting on
Yes,
my couch feeling like someone abandoned me. Like,
right. Yes, yes, right. Because the Hale, right?
hmm.
The guy with the voice, yeah. He all of a sudden, there was something that
Yeah,
happened to him, and you were like, wait, what?
right. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready.
Right, exactly. And then there was the whole thing with Kenzie, where it was just like, wait a minute, hold on. Like all of a sudden we're going to like her best friend in the entire world. There's gonna be so there's just a lot of weird splintering that I feel like really they tried to wrap it all up in that last season, knowing that they were
Hmm.
canceling, but it never really wrapped up, I think, well.
Right. And I'm with you with Bo on a train. I didn't quite understand that, but yeah.
Like they betrothed or there was some mark or I
Right.
don't even know. It was like, okay, what the hell's going on here?
Right, some weird time warp thing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, craziness, craziness. So what would you say would be your, and I know it's probably a lot because it is for me, your biggest takeaway from Lost Girl?
The biggest takeaway I would say is that people have the power to choose their own path.
Mm,
And so it's really a matter of choosing a path while also knowing that path can change at any time. You are always in control of your ability to go back and forth. And so, of course, I'm not necessarily advocating for, well, today I choose to be good and tomorrow I choose to be evil,
mhm,
or dark fae or light fae. It's more or less just you have the power to choose your own path, and that path is not binary. It's not okay. If I choose this one path, it's the same thing that I'm gonna have to do forever. And certainly Bo didn't do that.
mhm,
There were times where it was like she gave into her darker angels, and there were other times where
mhm,
she gave into the lighter side. Um, and when she went too far down one path, she was like, "Where did I go?" And she
mhm.
took a step back and would drastically change because then she realized how imbalanced she had become, and that's I just feel like we have the power to do that in our lives too.
Absolutely. Yes, that's how it was for me too. I love that really she was unapologetic about herself. I know in the beginning, she ran away and things like that because I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. She was still trying to get to use to her powers and she was inadvertently hurting people, but I like that she never slowed down about being who she is. And I think that's one of the I want to say role model in a certain sense, or that's something that we can take from a fictional character and apply it today is that hey, look, you can be yourself and you can find your group of people because that's what ended up happening. She has her best friend, she has the guy who's really the blood king who's undercover, like so she finds her tribe. And I always thought also, this as a sidebar, that bar was pretty cool. I'm like, how cool would it be to go to a bar with a bunch of, like witches and stuff and you guys are
Yes.
cool. But
Yes, where you can go and you're immediately like, whatever, comes out of my mouth is not going to be weird. No one's going to look
right.
at me like, what, crystals? You'd be like,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna be like, oh, tell me more. you know?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Some random person comes to sit down and talk. Exactly. So I guess that's actually two takeaways for me. I like that while she had character development, but at the core she was always herself. And two is just I would like to go to a witchy for a bar.
Absolutely.
So that leaves us speaking of witchy stuff, Sabrina, and this is the chilling adventures of Sabrina. And I'm glad that we had talked about that because I definitely had in my mind chilling adventures. But definitely we can have an episode where we can compare and contrast the good and happy Sabrina of the 90s, my childhood Sabrina, and then this chilling adventures. So
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, for me, I was like, ooh, where, which one, where do you want to go? And I mean, I think I personally really love the Chilling Adventures.
Hmm.
I thought it was really well done. Again, another thing where I was extremely sad that it was coming to an end kind of abruptly because it
Hmm.
still felt like it had so much more to do. I mean, Ravenwood, or not Ravenwood, what's that show based on Veronica and Archie?
Oh gosh, I'm tipping my tongue.
Riverdale.
Rivendell.
No, like Riverdale. So that's within the same universe, and Riverdale is still going, and that show is arguably not that great. Um, so I was definitely disappointed, but I thought this was such a fun, fresh take on, you know, they it was a complete opposite. Obviously, is where the last, especially in the last season, they kind of pointed this out, but the original show was all just comedy and
Hmm.
silly and ridiculous. I mean, granted, this was ridiculous too, but this actually brought in this show brought in a lot more elements of actual witchcraft.
Hmm.
Real ancient folklore. It brought in the ideas of subservience to the crown, and women are subservient to the men, and men hold all the power in these positions. And then it broke that, and
Hmm.
that's what I mean personally. That's what I loved the most about it. Was that it was a show about women taking their power back and saying, no, no, this isn't okay.
Yes, I love that even at a young age, she was just saying, I'm not signing the book. I'm doing my own thing. And I love that this came out during this time because I just feel like this is a great time for this. So many more people are being on the forefront of expressing their spirituality, whether they're into occult or witchcraft, whatever the case may be. So I just think this is just such a great show where it can pique your interest to other things. Of course, there are some things that aren't exactly accurate, but at least it entertains the thought and then it triggers people, or trigger probably isn't a good word, but it causes people to dig a little deeper, like, oh, huh, they mentioned that. Let me look that up. So I think that's one of the great things about this show is that it creates a spark of interest.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I really loved is that like you said, she was like, I'm not signing that book. And she really made those choices. But that continued in so many other areas of the show where the other women were, the other witches were more, they were sexually liberated and they
Hmm.
could choose whatever path they wanted to go down, which I think is always very important. And, we look back through history about witchcraft and Salem witch trials and all those things. And really, what it really came down to was that anytime any kind of woman amassed any kind of power, they would use that label as a witch in order to prosecute her, in
Hmm.
order to burn her at the stake. And so in this case, it was completely flipped on its head, where it was like, no, we are powerful. I mean, like, looking at Aunt Z, she was just as powerful, and everybody knew it as, the high priest.
Hmm.
And yet she still had to be subservient. Whenever he pulled rank, she had to be subservient, and she couldn't still had no faculties truly over where her life went, in the sense of that, I guess, organization, for lack of a better word, that church of night.
Right.
And so I just love that they were able to freely explore that and just spit in the eye of the patriarchy.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't begin to tell you how I was just like, yeah, when I was it Aunt I'm trying to think which aunt it was who called on Goddess Hecate. I was like, yeah,
Yes.
oh my God. I felt like I don't know, when you see your football team score a touchdown, you're like, yes.
Oh yeah, I was getting all emotional because it was such an amazing, riveting speech. It was just like it pulled in
Hmm.
all the energy of female power that is oftentimes, people try to push that to the side. And it was just so beautiful, where she was just full on completely rejecting this idea of the patriarchy,
Hmm.
and just called down on, to the oldest of powers. Because even in the show, they were like, Hecate was predating Lucifer, and so she was far more powerful than he was. She was a goddess,
Hmm.
and so it was just such a beautiful moment, for them to take that back.
Absolutely. And another thing I enjoy about this show, which I think which makes it so much more important, is that each character has its own dynamic that really works well with other characters. So, when we talk about Lost Girl, Bo was just such a strong character that in ways she overshadowed the other characters. And maybe that's what the way the writers wanted it to be. But with this, I mean, when you think of like Roz, she's dealing with her, visions and things like that. And then when she finds out more about herself later, I just love how each character pushes through something that they think is holding them back, and then they get to be their true selves. And a bonus, their friends are cool with it. There isn't this aspect where someone doesn't feel like they don't belong. It's more like they found where they belong and it works for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean the last season was so powerful in that way too. Um, yeah, just such a good point, and they definitely um, I mean, we're talking even down to the Weird Sisters. Like I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but the Weird Sisters even had their own idiosyncrasies and their own personalities and all of the things, and they were allowed to express themselves fully, even if it wasn't something that someone agreed with, but it was still allowed to do that. And then you had Theo and you had Ross and you had all of these different stories that just came together so beautifully as not just supports, but they were all individuals within the show as well, rather than it just solely focusing on Sabrina. Because even in the original Sabrina, which again I know we'll talk about potentially more at a later date, or you will, it was very much okay. The whole thing was just Sabrina and Zelda and Harvey and everybody were just background characters for the most part. Or at least that's how I saw it back when I was a child, basically,
Yeah.
because it was a long time ago. But yeah, this show was just the complete opposition of that.
Right. Yeah. I feel like the Sabrina in this one definitely takes a little bit of a backseat at times. But when she shows up, she really shows up. But yeah, characters in this show definitely have room to grow where you can actually get to know them and like them and identify with them in some fashion.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
So
Well,
yeah, I'm sad that it's over, but hopefully HBO will pick it up.
oh, is that a rumor?
I read somewhere that it might get picked up because I'm not going to spoil it for anyone because I know it's fresh, but the way it ended was like they can work with that ending. So yeah, the rumor was that like hopefully HBO would pick it up. Because I mean it has a great following. I think that Netflix just probably has a certain amount of new shows they want to get out and they rotate certain things out. I have no clue, but I read that there's a chance it could get picked up.
That would be amazing.
That
I also
would
was
be.
reading too that because Riverdale is owned by the CW, that it
Mhm.
just creates a whole logistic. I mean, I think that's part of it too with Netflix is that there's a challenge
Mm,
where Netflix will pick up the rights to one thing, but the entire scope of that
mm,
one thing is owned by either one or two more networks.
got
So
it.
where it was like the Marvel shows,
Right.
all of those got canceled when Disney bought all the rights to Marvel, even though they had licensed it. You know what I mean? So all of those
Right.
shows got canceled. I just think it's probably a very similar thing, but I will pray for HBO Max to pick it up.
Yes. And also side note, with the shows that had people, especially in high school, I'm like, where were the cute people like that when I was in high school? It's just so funny when I look at this. I'm like, oh God, what was the one character's name? I was like, excuse me. That's the one thing that cracks me up with the different universe. I'm like, where are these people?
Yes. Yes. And who is the one that you were?
Oh my gosh, what is his name? I'm on IMDb. What's
Are you
his
talking about the
character's name?
cousin?
The cousin's cute, but Gavin Leatherwood. He plays Nicholas
Oh
Scratch.
yeah, Nichols Scratch.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
cutie.
those
I'm
people
like,
did not exist in high school. We were all pimply faced and
right?
and skinny, or you had like five of the jocks that might have looked sort of like him,
Maybe.
but not even close.
Maybe. I just had to put that side note in there because I'm seeing a theme here, especially with the next show we're going to talk about. I'm like, where were these people when I was in school?
Yeah, I mean, in Prudence, she's absolutely gorgeous. Tati Gabrielle, she's just
Yes,
stunning.
makeup
Stunning.
flawless.
And she does her own hair.
Yeah, I saw that on Instagram. I'm like,
Nice.
what?
Yep.
Man, I don't know. I need to be in some fictional universe.
some yeah, they've got a level of thirst trap that does not exist in reality.
Exactly. So that leads us to Motherland, and I recently discovered this because it's on Hulu, and I thought that it was on maybe like a different network, but I really like this show. I think it's so fresh. It has a different perspective on witchcraft, and then it combines defense. So what are some of your thoughts about Motherland?
I love it so so much. It immediately hooked me
Mhm.
because it immediately kind of draws you in. You're like, wait, what? Because I mean, I saw the trailer, but I still didn't really fully understand what the premise
Mhm.
was because it flips our history in the United States on its head.
Mhm.
And so I didn't really fully understand it. But then you're immediately just like the way that the show starts, it's like a balloon pops and everybody and their mother in a mall dies.
Yeah.
Like, so, and you're just like, wait, what the heck just happened?
Right.
Um, and so it's just such a fresh take. And then that fresh take also comes with its own challenges because it's like, everything comes with a cost, whether that is a good or a bad cost, everything comes with a cost. And so part of what we see in Motherland, you know, is they made a deal instead of all being burned at the stake. They made a deal to basically become the soldiers of the United States. And so that still has a cost because now basically instead of getting killed, they're living essentially in bondage because it's like you are literally if you are a witch, you are conscripted to the army. Period. End of story. And so it's just interesting that that's part of the cost, and that's obviously part of what the show is exploring, which I find extremely fascinating. Is this idea of just like when do you fully ever get to own your power and your own freedom, and what does
Mm.
that even look like?
Yes, yes. And then it's, do you follow your inner voice or what other people tell you? Because it was the one, what's her name? I think it's the main character where her mom didn't want her to answer the call. So the call is basically the call that the witches get, and it's like this medallion that spins in the air. Like you got to grab it or something like that, and then basically you get sent to their training camp. And for some people, like with war and anything else, you lose people, and there's that one side of the coin of don't do it because, as Henri was just saying, you won't really have full control of your powers because now you have to do this, or it's you do that and you actually do get to train and use your powers even though you had to be in the military. So it's a very, like I was saying earlier, just it's a fresh take on it about, just following again that voice, but also it's talking about feeling the bigger shoes of someone else. For example, the one character, where is she? Abigail, the Bellwethers. So her mom was this big, she was a heroine. She did great things, and now she has to live up to that. So it's just so many things, so multi-layered, and that's what I love about it too. And of course, dating, and of course, there's a few holidays that pop up that
Mhm.
they celebrate. So I
Beltane.
thought that was great.
Yeah,
I
which
didn't hear you.
I was gonna say Beltane.
Yeah.
So what I love about that is it's like what it's looking at is again similar to Lost Girl. It's bringing in and even Sabrina, even though Sabrina didn't quite go as deep, but it was bringing back some of the actual things within paganism, and so I found that that was really interesting. So Beltane is a sex holiday, and they're using it as a way to give power, to take power from sexuality and free expression of that sexuality, which is obviously, clearly what I've said so far is right up my alley. And what I also find really interesting too is that there's also still this kind of like schism um, in between the types of witches who get to go on and be successful and get
Mhm.
to, be a part of the world, because what happens is you either graduate from your witch school from Fort Salem, which is essentially your witch high school, and if you don't graduate to go on to witch college, they send you to the front lines. And so obviously being sent to the front lines increases your chances of just being cannon fodder for the cause. And so I find that that's so interesting too, because it starts to get into this idea of worth, and what does that actually mean, and why is it acceptable to do this all for the sake of some ancient pact that was made that isn't even relevant in today's times.
And that's a great point because along this path, there are a lot of traditions, or at least parts of the traditions that do not apply now, or probably shouldn't apply at all. So it's very interesting to see that take in, and for people to think about how that's impactful of, looking at a witch, or like I said, another spiritual inclined person thinking, oh, they're so much more advanced than me. Oh, they're definitely going to go into that college or do this. I don't know. I'm not that strong. I'm not that powerful. What really is just finding your power. So it was very interesting how they had to practice in different ways and still having to deal with that.
Yeah, especially for Rael, everybody looks at, oh, you're just you're a healer's daughter. But
Hmm.
actually what's turning out is that she's actually extremely powerful.
Hmm.
But she doesn't know it. And so it also, and I also find that is kind of a reflection of real life. Sometimes we don't recognize our own power. And so there are bits and spurts throughout our lives where we have, moments of true greatness where we're like, holy shit. And then all of a sudden we retract because we push too far outside of the limits that somebody else has defined for us. Because again, they keep just saying, oh, you're just a healer's daughter. And then on top of that, they're like, oh, she's got some down south bootleg type of healing, powers that she channels because of her mother, because her mother, I guess they were Southern or something like that, but just like some backwoods type of healing
Hmm.
modality. And again, it's all what they're trying to do is just to define her, just like they're trying to define Abigail. Abigail has to live up to this, tradition of all these bellwether witches who have all been, 10 out of 10 for centuries. And, so it's just so interesting. And then you have Tally, who's no one's really expecting anything from her, but it's
Hmm.
clear that she's incredibly brave and has an extremely big heart. So I just love that all these things. And Anacostia, basically she's the auntie of
Hmm.
everybody. And she's the one who's just, you are the faithful, good soldier. And there's nothing more that you are. Like you're a powerful witch, but you're just a good soldier. You do what you're told. And even she's, starting to kind of lean into the edges of what that might mean. And I cannot, season two cannot come fast enough. Um,
I've
um,
yeah, I've literally been on their Instagram asking about season two. Seriously, I got Hulu because of this. So I'm guessing I might have seen the ad on Instagram. I don't know, but uh, yeah, to your point, they are questioning their limits, and I think Talia is probably had the most, or I guess maybe the quickest growth, because I was rooting for her, and when she was stepping up and doing these things, I was like, okay, yeah, she was really making her voice heard. So that's what I love. And even when the one, I guess she was a general, or she was the dean of students in one school, excuse me, that Abigail Bellwether was going to apply to, and she basically just brushed her off and said, "Oh, you're a Bellwether. You'll get into this with your eyes closed." And now
Mhm,
she's questioning her purpose. So it's just this show is just so great. Like this should be shown in high schools.
mhm. Absolutely. And then you even have, you have General Adler, who
Mm,
everybody's misunderstanding because they're seeing her actions as very, very cut and dry, very black and white. And then, there's some very powerful scenes where she's like, do you understand, like she talks about the cost. Do you understand what the cost is, and what, the pressure and the what I am trying to hold on my shoulders? Do you understand
mm,
all the intricacies? Because they make some decisions that are arguably immature, even if they are guided by, what's kind of right and wrong, but they're not understanding the bigger picture of what's really happening because they don't know, because they're also still children. They're also,
Right.
I mean, they're all above 18. Even because this is like a weird high school, your high school goes for a couple of years and then you go to college, and so it's a little bit later of a timeline, but they're all technically adults, but they still don't know everything. They're still learning to come into their power and all the intricacies of the world they live in. And so General Adler's just like, do you know and understand what I am holding up, how I protect all of you, all of us? And so it was
Right.
just a really nice scene where they just really had a really straight talk type of moment. And so I'm really curious to see where that goes in season 2.
Yeah, I appreciate that because she has seen so much. And it's like, how can you explain seeing what she has saw to someone who is year one? You know, and they're questioning her because they're looking at what she's doing, which again, like you were saying, they were a bit questionable. Like, okay, wait a minute, you're doing some, you're walking a fine line here, lady. But when she explains it, they kind of get it, but you can still see that they're uneven about it. And that's a good scene because it's showing that we don't have to agree with everything 100%, but we can be at some point where we can just go, okay, and let's get this done. Or, okay, I'm starting to get you a little bit. So I think that was really
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, and I think it's also too, it's like some of the things that General Adler has done. I mean, there's kind of a through line between all of these shows, where it's like, this idea of good and bad being completely binary and one-sided, where really we live in an area of gray in our society more and more
Hmm.
these days. And so the things that she's doing, she's making the heart, like, it's clear that General Adler feels it. Like, it's not like she's out here doing things that are morally questionable and
Hmm.
it doesn't land in her body. No, she's like, I know what I'm doing is wrong. It is the only choice, because the alternative is something, is whatever, bad could come out of that. So, but she's been the one that's been in charge for, whatever, 250 years or something, because
Hmm.
of the pact that she originally made. So this is an entire construct that came from her. So she's also the one who had to watch, leading up till that pact, where she watched all of her sisters die. You know what I
Right.
mean? So she has that reference that none of them could ever have, because they never lived in that world. It's like talking to a veteran who has been to war and then trying to talk to a civilian. Civilian doesn't understand it because they could never. And it's not to say, that they should never understand it, but they just can't. They never could, and that's okay.
Hmm.
It's so layered and nuanced, and I love that it goes everywhere with sexuality being very fluid, as a
Hmm.
little kind of aside. But it's just, there's so many layers to every single one of these choices that every single one of these people make.
No, absolutely. And I love that as well because that's what's needed. That's society. Like that's the real society. You know, like this is what's going on. Everyone is not going to like exactly the same thing. So I love that they really embrace sexuality. Like one time Abigail walked up to this guy. She's like, "I need you for like 10 minutes," because she needed his energy. And I was just like, "Go ahead, girl." She said what she wanted. He was like, "Okay." You know, so she just walked
uh,
right up to
I
him.
love Abigail's character for that, because she's just so liberated, and it's
Right.
so interesting because it's like, and what I do love is it's almost like this, it's not really made in Mother Crone quite, but it's like
Mhm.
Abigail, Tally, and Rael. Like, you have, Abigail, who's super experienced, so arguably she I guess actually could be made a Mother Crone. She's the crone, right? And then you have, the mother, which is Rael, who is not inexperienced and has lived a life, but she's still repressed or still dealing with a lot of things, and still really questioning who she even is, and
Mhm.
because her mind is twisted in a way. And then you have the maiden, who is Tally, who is completely innocent in all ways. She entered which college, a virgin.
Mhm.
And so, you have those, each one of those people kind of guiding the other. And, Abigail's still learning from Tally. Tally is still teaching Rael. Rael is still teaching Tally. And I love it so much.
And they really help each other. Like they were rooting for Tally, and then when who was it? Was it Rael? Where she said, "Oh, here's my girlfriend." They were like, "Oh my God, you got a girlfriend? Tell
Yeah.
us about it." I love that sisterhood. So
Yeah.
I just, it's such a fresh take. I love it.
Yes, it's so good. And I think too, even on the sisterhood part, it's like Abigail, up until basically through the whole season, basically hated Rael
Mhm.
because she was a threat to her standing within within the family. And as we said, like there's this mantle that she has been saddled with, where she has to hold it up, or she's a failure, she's ashamed, she's all this. And so Rael is someone who's like, again, even in the mother, she's the middle ground. She's more mature. So she's like, I'm going to do what I want. And so they
Mhm.
were hating on each other pretty much most of the season. But at the end of the day, they still showed up as a unit because they knew that that's what they had to do to
Mhm.
get through. Like they were able to set aside their differences and their disagreements in order to come through for the greater purpose here. And it just, yeah, I love that. I can't gush about it more. Out of all of these shows, this is probably the show that I've been most excited for in years.
Yeah, same. That's why I'm all in their Instagram.
Well, I've had Taylor Hicks and Jessica Sutton respond to me
Oh,
in Instagram, and I was like, oh my God.
oh
They
my
responded
goodness.
me directly.
That is
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so I was super fanboyed on them. So it was just, yeah, I stalk their Instagram all the time. Every time they're like, season two, it's like, okay, can you give us something more? It's been a long time. It's been months. Like,
Right?
did this launch? Oh, it did launch right in the beginning of COVID. I forgot.
Oh,
Right in
wow.
the beginning, yeah, it was March 18th is the first
Oh, I
episode.
see. Oh my
Yeah, so
goodness.
okay, so it feels like it's been 100 years because it has been 100 years.
Because it has
so, so I get that. But yeah, it's been almost a year. It's been a
yeah.
really long time because in the last episode, the last episode of the season I think was in either late June, so it's been basically going
Hmm.
on 8-9 months. So I'm hoping that we can get some kind of update soon. Oh wait, no, the
Yeah.
last episode was in May, so it's been even longer.
Oh man. Well, it definitely feels like 100 years. And
Yes.
speaking of 100 years, a discovery of witches. Because season two, they went to a
Hmm.
different time. So I'll leave it at that. Dot dot dot. Um, this is also it's not as fresh of a take, but I like the way it's going because I'm starting to see this trend of so it's witches, vampires, but it's a little bit more of a scientific take to it because they're looking at the blood more. So it's kind of giving me hints of Underworld where they're looking at the blood and things like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Um, but what are your so before I go into it, what's your take about Discovery of Witches? Because I'm starting to gush over this too.
Yeah. So in I was instantly drawn into this one as well. Um, a little less, not as excited as Motherland, but drawn
Hmm.
into like a deeper thing because I could just tell that there was just some really deeper undertones to what this all was really about. And I love the fact that again, it's one of those shows that is trying to base it in as much realism as it can. And so it's like, you have this world that is running completely parallel, just like Underworld, to the human world, except the difference is that there are people and players within the human world that know all about it. And so
Hmm.
I find that that's really interesting because that creates, obviously unique challenges in and of itself because now they can't just do everything in the shadows. There's people watching.
Right.
Um, and and it's kind of a slow burn type of show. It's not one of those shows that immediately gives you all the answers and then it works through or backs out into, going back and providing the context. It's like a little answer here, context here, and then it really builds and builds and builds. Um, And so I just absolutely love season two. I did try to read the books, and I have to say that the point of view that the books are written in is not my favorite. So I had a really hard time getting into it. But I
Mm-hmm.
almost wish now that I did, because now I'm getting impatient. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's clear in season two that they got some budget, they got some money, and
Mm-hmm.
now their budgets are, because costumes and the way that it's shot is just so much better than even season one. And I wish I read the books, but yeah, that's my initial reaction to it.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was a book ahead of time. And when I first saw it, it was a trailer, and I thought it was talking about the history, like a documentary. So I thought, oh, I
Mhm.
love documentaries. Let me check this out. So it was a delight to see that it wasn't and that it was a series. I'm just thinking, oh, okay, let's see where this takes me. And I like the whole forbidden love thing. I just think I know it's a little cheesy sometimes and over, exaggerated. We've seen this in different, shows with vampires and witches
Right.
and werewolves, but I still like that forbidden love because it shows that, especially if it's meant to be, like something will happen and like they have to fight for what they believe in, and it's a kind reminder that we do have to do that at the same time understand who we are. So here we are with this where she kind of minded her business, the main character. She doesn't really want parts of this witchcraft. Like, and I'm trying to remember the beginning of season one. Like she knows she's a witch, correct? She just
Yeah,
doesn't want.
yeah,
Yeah.
she knows she's a witch. But oh damn, now that you say that, I don't really, that's the one thing that I don't know if it was fully clear. It's clear that she is someone who doesn't use any of her power.
Right. And I also believe that she doesn't know just how strong she is. Yes, okay. So it's
Yep.
coming back to me. Her parents disguised her powers or
Yeah,
something
they
like that
bound
because
her. Yep, her
right,
dad
they
bound
bound
her. Yep.
right to protect her. So that that also reminds me about how we feel like we have to protect ourselves a lot of times, even though her parents did it for her and she, grew up with knowing that, there are some things that she has power over, but to realize her full potential, I think is something that many of us can identify with. It doesn't even have to be anything magical. It just be our confidence, our strength, our willingness to speak up, to live our truth. So I just think that was a cool perspective, as opposed to just being so against it 100% and aggressive about it. She's just like, I know, but I really like my studies.
Right. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think the interesting part too is that when it comes to the choices we make, so they made a choice to bind her, to hide her from, I don't, from whoever, and because that's the part I still a little fuzzy on. But they obviously didn't know what would happen to them.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like they made a choice with the assumption that they would always be able to be there, not knowing what the future could hold in terms of consequences. And so for us as people in the real world, it's the same thing. You never know what those outcomes truly will be in the end. And so when you make choices for other people in the sake of protecting them, and it's like a tale as old as time. Every single show that I've ever seen where a parent or someone that cares about someone does something to protect them, what is that saying? Is it the rooster comes to roost or something like that?
Yeah, the roosters come home to roast or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know
The
what you
roosters
mean.
come home to roost. So it's like basically in the end, the Pied Piper comes and you're still gonna pay, because those choices took away somebody else's freedom,
Hmm.
and especially if they don't know that that's what happened, and neither does anyone else. Eventually holes are gonna get poked,
Hmm.
and when enough holes get poked, you see through it, and it's just, and then you have to deal with the fallout. But in this case, you learn immediately in the season one is that her parents aren't around. So it's
Hmm.
like there was no one there to guide her when that hole became clear.
Right. Her aunts tried to help her, but there was still that resistance there. And then you have this. alluring, vampire and it's so funny because he's almost like the stereotypical vampire where he's mysterious, he's slender, he has a slight accent and he knows how to speak properly, he's just very
Right.
polished. Um, but I like him, but I still feel like he has not just one but two more agendas going on.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting how we see this play a part in so many movies and of course in our lives. So I am very interested to see where that goes. Like I know we're in season 2. I hope that this doesn't get canceled and then I won't be depressed on my couch wondering why
Yeah.
would they do this to me. But
Right.
I love their dynamic. I do want to see more of the aunts because they do play a big role, and I
Yes.
would love to see uh a little bit more of their backstory. I know there were some flashbacks and things like that, and I love that also their house is alive. Um, that's cool. So I think that this is, like we were saying, not as fresh of a take as Motherland, but I like the growth of the main character, and I like how she's at least acknowledging that she has power and she's starting to warm up to that as she goes along. I like that growth as opposed to sort of the typical witch they have where she's just running amok or she's just
Mhm.
again aggressive. Like, no, I don't want nothing to do with it because it's all wrong. It's like you just got to understand your gifts.
Yeah, and I don't even think that the honestly the story isn't that, like you said, it's not really that new. It's kind of cliche in that way, but it is truly the character development. And also, there are threads that they haven't showed us yet. Like,
Mm.
there is clearly something going on that we don't like with the other witch. Um, what's her name?
Oh,
Satu.
yeah.
Like Satu, like we don't really know what that's about yet. And so it's like there's
Hmm.
clearly something that happened, or there's some convergence of some old something that is all coming into play. And so there's all these players that are raveled up in this thing, whatever it is, because we still don't know. And so that's the part that keeps me really coming back. And obviously, I enjoy the acting. Um,
Hmm.
but it's definitely something where there's so much backstory here. And
Yeah.
who knows if the books even go into all of it. And so that's where it's like they definitely have some creative license to to tell us what that backstory is because we still don't know why. Like, okay, well, why didn't Diana have her powers? What did they really block it for? Because they still didn't give a definitive answer. What
Right.
and then it's like, well, what do the aunties have to do with it? Because
Right.
clearly there's a lot more to that story that we just do not know.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really just how it unravels that has me hooked. And also just the cinematography and the costumes and
Hmm.
everything is just a complete draw for me.
Yeah, I really think that's what it is. The acting, like you said, the cinematography. Yeah, because they really only spent one episode. I remember this because I remember when the parents binded her, they didn't really say what that guy wanted with her or with her
Right.
powers at least. But they
Exactly.
were afraid enough that they hid it. So there's something there with him. Like I don't know if he's just taking witch's powers or what, but yeah, so I'm very interested to see where that goes. And I just think that this show is just so great for the spiritual community because, it is kind of fun to look at the stereotypical the whole dynamic of the witch and the vampire. Where is this going? Because it's sort of like with Lost Girl. You had the light fae, dark fae, and like the light fae stays with the light fae, dark fae stays over there. And
Mhm.
here it is, they're like you said, slow burn. They're slowly developing a relationship, and now it's like okay, now they're a little bit serious. And season 2, he's like, "This is my wife," but they're not really married yet. So she's like, "Who else thinks they were married?" So you see certain things that are keeping you intrigued.
Mhm.
I like that, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think this is important because it's a blend of again that stereotypical, witch, vampire, but also that growth that happens. And well, why would someone want to protect that person to that point? Like, why didn't they just leave? So I like that.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool too is that it's like we still don't really know. Like, so all these ancient families we're all vying for power, but we still don't really know why. Like why,
Mm-hmm.
the de Clermont family, why, why are they the ones that are in power? Why are they fighting so hard to keep it? And there's things that we kind of are like, okay, I guess I get it, but you still don't really know the true backstory about why it all even matters. Was there a war where they wiped out half of each other, or whatever? And then that doesn't even touch on the book, right? So this whole
Mm.
show is about a book, and I just have this feeling that when they find that damn book, it's going to be showing them that they've all been stupid this whole time, and they just
Right.
that they've all been on the same side the whole time. They're just a different version of that side. It's like a three-sided
Mm.
coin, basically. It's like they're all going to be on the same side, and they're going to be like, oh, and then they'll have the choice of whether you want to stay with the status quo, or do you want to accept that this status quo was based on lies or based on
Right.
misinformation, because they lost that book hundreds of years ago, right? The
Mm-hmm.
book of life. They lost it. So that, and that's what a big part of this search for is, like, the thing is that's going to help us. Because the other part too is that they don't know the future of themselves because they don't have this book.
Right. Right, exactly. And I agree with you. I'm wondering if it is something like that because where did this rift between vampires and witches start? And also you have these humans over here too. So
Mm-hmm. Right.
so I'm very interested where that's going and what it's actually going to state and how that will look going forward. Is it, you guys were twins and then like one was a vampire, one was a witch, and I don't know.
Right. Yep. Yep.
But
Exactly.
I'm very curious about that. So yeah, that's to be determined. Season two is out. Not the whole not I don't think it's the complete season two, right? I think
Yeah,
it's
we're
just like I
halfway
think.
through because
Mhm.
I believe the last episode is going to be I think the last week of February.
Okay.
But
And
right
I
now we just had season episode 5,
mhm.
um, and oh wait, that's actually episode 5 of 7. So the
Oh,
season
okay.
finale is on the 19th of February. So it
Oh,
is
wow.
right around the
That's
corner.
right around the corner.
Yes.
Okay. So I know you can also get it on Shutter. Um, it's a website that streams all thriller, horror, suspenseful movies. So because originally I saw, like I was saying, the trailer on TV, and it's like through a different subscription service. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to get Shutter, and I have all the thrillers
Yep.
and stuff.
Exactly.
So in case someone's wondering, where can I watch Discovery of Witches? I think it's on Sundance or something like that. But anyway,
Yep.
Shutter's the website, and you can get it there. Motherland's Hulu. Chilling Adventures is on Netflix, and Lost Girl. I don't know where you can find Lost Girl now. It was on Netflix. Um,
Yeah, they
so
took it off. I think it
yeah.
might be on Sci-Fi's app now.
There you go.
Now
There
everybody
you
and
go.
mother has a streaming service now, so.
N- Nice. Whew, what a great conversation.
Yes, I love this. I love talking about these shows, and I have so many more that I could talk about for days. So.
I mean, we can spend one episode talking about one show. I mean, we can like, deep dive in these characters. But one thing I will say is it seems like the theme with and it just so happened to mean these four, even though I know we talked through the different shows, is that there is a strong female lead in these shows. There's a strong sexuality liberation in these shows. There's a strong breaking barriers in these shows that I just absolutely adore. So I love that in their own way, in their own universes, they have that. So that would be my overall takeaways from these shows and how they do such a great service in that way to the spiritual community.
Mhm, I agree. Yeah, they are definitely, and the spiritual community is always looking, within as well as looking outside of ourselves. And so these shows, every single one of them, balance that in some type of way. And it's through a different means, and it's through different external factors, but it always comes down to choice and how you live your life on your terms, because every single one of the characters in these, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to say screw the norms. I want to live my
Hmm.
life my way. And I think even more so now, in the world that we live in today, that is more relevant than ever before.
Hmm.
Where the lived experience of the individual is becoming more prominent. And then how does that lived experience of the individual fit into the whole? And I love that all of these shows really touch and push the bounds of that.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Any final words?
You have not watched Motherland, you really need to do it because it's immediately going to grip you. It's super exciting and dramatic and all the fun things. But otherwise, Discovery of Witches. And Sabrina still is in the comics. So even though part 5 potentially won't be on TV, part 5 is going to be done in the comic books. So if you get to the end of part 4 and you're like, I really want to know what happened, part 5 will happen in the comic books.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. Witch War is part 5.
All right, HBO, don't let us down.
Exactly.
I mean, but they act so well too. I follow them on Instagram, the cast of Sabrina. They look like they get along very, very well. It looks like they are genuinely friends.
Yeah, they have such good rapport with one another.
Right, and I know 2 of the actors are dating. The actress who plays Roz, and so Ross Lynch, the actor who plays Harvey, and Jazz Sinclair, who plays Roz, they're dating. So I mean, like, they're like they're having a great time there. Again, Henri, this was such a pleasure. I'm glad to have spoken with you about these shows and have your take. And I hope that the listeners out there, rewatch these shows if you haven't watched it in a while. If you haven't watched them, please take your time, get your drink, go get a snack. You will not be disappointed. So as always, I'm sending you so many blessings. I'm rooting for you. Remember to be kind to yourself. Until next time. As always, Spiritual Trailblazer, thank you for tuning in. Do make sure to stop by and visit me at tiamariejohnson.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Last but not least, be kind to yourself. I'm rooting for you, and I'm sending you so many blessings. Until next time.